Hey Internet, this is a Fuji GS645 Professional, and it's being shot in photo booth, so it's probably inverted. But this is a Fuji 645 folding lens bellows film camera. These guys were made in the early 80s and have several different iterations, but the folding one was the first one, and there was not a whole lot of video review stuff on YouTube, so I figured I would give one for this camera because I kept coming up with the wrong camera when I searched for it before I bought it. So, a couple things to keep in mind with this camera. It's tiny, little guy. Folds out. It's got an f3.4, is that right? Yeah, f3.4 lens, so pretty fast. And shutter speeds from 1 second up to 1/500th of a second right there on the lens. Focusing distance minimum is a meter, goes all the way up to infinity, obviously, and it's tiny. It's a really cool little camera. A couple really big known issues with these cameras, though, things to look out for if you want to get one. The bellows, you can see mine are kind of flaking apart there. They are very prone to tiny little holes, which obviously leads to light leaks. And they're really expensive to replace. You can't really get them replaced at very many places. The whole process is time-consuming. There's like 2 walkthroughs online, which I looked at just in case that was an issue with this camera. Luckily, it's not. These bellows don't leak, which is cool. They might at some point, though, because they are flaking apart. They're really, really thin, and they needed to be because the whole thing needs to fold up. The problem is, of course, when they wear out, they're not the easiest thing. It's not like a 4x5. You can just pull them off, you know. Yeah, so that's a pain. Other thing, common issue with these, less common than the bellows, but still pretty common. The shutter has a tendency to stick. Mine does that, so I'm actually returning it. I've had it for all of a week. But I'm going to return it tomorrow. Bought it online, got it on eBay for about $225, which is a really good deal. And, you know, when you get what you pay for, I need to send it back. But for me, yeah, the shutter speed thing, the shutter, when I unfold the camera, the first frame that I shoot, once it's folded out, that shutter drags. It just doesn't operate properly. Cock the shutter, fire it again, and it's on point. It's nice. But when you're shooting 120 film, you know, you get 15 frames, or on this, for 220, you get 30 as well, which is cool. I've got a roll of 220 in here right now because I put a roll in before I got my test roll back, so don't do that because then you end up wasting film. So I'm going to have to shoot another roll with a good, third of my frames wrong. So yeah, I'm not going to open the back and show you, but it takes 120, 220. It's just a pressure plate like most rangefinders, medium format rangefinders. A couple of things to cover on this camera. It's got a built-in meter, which is pretty basic, just like a plus, a 0, or a negative for your exposure levels. Kind of like an old Pentax SLR or something like that. It is a vertical frame because it's a 645 camera, and you load the 645 film normally instead of horizontally instead of vertically like you would on most 645 cameras. So what you get is a different orientation when you're framing, which is confusing for some people. Some people don't like that. I shoot a lot of portraits, so I like it a lot, and it's also not too much of a hassle to just turn the camera. It's really small. It's really light if you wanted to shoot something at a landscape orientation. It's got a built-in rangefinder, which is not the best. It's kind of hard to, it's just hard to see. It's right in the middle of the frame, but it's really small. It's not the brightest viewfinder, so that's a bit of a bummer. But it works, and it's accurate, and this lens is really sharp, so, you know, rangefinders, you just get the focus right, and then when it's on, it's on. It's really sharp lens. I was surprised. Just bummed out about the shutter speed. Other things to note, well, when you adjust the focusing distance, the frame lines in the viewfinder do change. They do shrink as you get closer focusing, which is nice. And I understand there is a parallax difference for this lens, for this whole camera, but I didn't shoot anything that was particularly close, so I didn't see too much of a parallax issue. On these 645 cameras, though, I have noticed in general, I end up framing things that are all set a little bit to the bottom left. when I get close. Yeah, all in all, to close the camera lens, close the actual camera, it's got directions on the back usually, but a lot of these are in Japanese. Mine's not, which is cool, but when you basically just have to cock the shutter, mine's already set, and then set the focusing ring back to infinite. And then there's a little lever in here. This is closed. You can just pop that, and it closes. Really small, really compact, hot shoe on top, leaf shutter, so it'll, sync speed is whatever you want to set your shutter speed to. It'll go to the 500th, which is nice. Anything else to keep in mind with this camera? I don't particularly think so. I used it for a week. I've used Fuji 645 rangefinders before. I sold a GA645, the autofocus one, to get this guy, which I'm now going to return and either buy another one or buy something completely different. But it's a really small camera. Ergonomically, it's a little small for my hand, but not the worst. Yeah, that's about all for this thing. I just wanted to kind of put some content out there about this particular model. It does have a PC port on the front for syncing flashes as well, if you like. I think I mentioned that it takes two 1.5 volt batteries, but if not, it does on the bottom. Any CVS, you can get them. And that's about it for this camera. Not a whole lot of features. It's got a self-timer, which is cool. You can do like bulb shutter with this little shutter button on top. Self-timers, whatever. I'm never going to use that. Yeah, that's about it. So if you find one for less than $300 and it's got some sort of guarantee on it, swoop it up, man. It's a solid camera. But don't pay a bunch of money for one because you probably eventually will run into issues with your bellows, and you very well might come with issues with your bellows or your shutter. I'm going to return it, but I like it a lot, and I'm kind of bummed to have to return it. That's all. See ya.